Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Haunted Vermont podcast. My name is Paul Dosky, and joining us tonight is Evan Thomas, and he is the founder of the paranormal group Green Mountain Ghost Society. So, Evan, welcome aboard.
Hey, thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
All right, Evan. Well, before we get started into, your group here, just for everybody listening, so what kind of got you into the paranormal that kind of led you to creating Green Mountain Ghost Society?
It's to be fair, like a lot of people, I think it was TV that got me into it. I was an 80s child and grew up in the 80s and 90s. Back when Robert Stark was hosting Unsolved Mysteries. Back then, anytime there was an episode about a haunted location that came on, I was always extra interested. Always loved scary movies, even as a kid. And so, that was just kind of something I was into. I liked the creepy and unknown. But I remember there was one show on MTV called Fear, and it was like a game show. And this was probably my first experience to people doing using equipment and investigating things. Of course, this was a game show where people would go and they would have to do certain tasks related to ghost hunting, and the whole idea was that if they got scared and had to leave, then they were off the show. But then Ghost Hunters and Ghost Adventures, once those shows started coming out, that was huge for me. I loved watching those shows. So one night I was at home sitting on the couch, and I was sending some messages back and forth with my friend Dean, who I consider the co-founder. And I mentioned I was watching one of those shows, and he was like, "Oh, that's a good one." And next thing you know, we were talking about doing one of these groups ourselves. And from there we started giving the idea for different names back and forth, and I was going online trying to see, well, is this name taken, and we ended up on Green Mountain Ghost Society that way. And messaging back and forth, that's actually even when I made the Facebook group that we had. And before we had the Facebook page, we had a group, and I think they're both still up. But a few weeks later, I think our other member, one of our other members, Jared, actually joined the same way. I was just texting back and forth with him and mentioned it, and he was all about it. So I consider the three of us the founding fathers. But it's pretty much that simple.
There you go. So what? I guess you just kind of watch these shows, and then you were just like, I want to do what they do, and that's basically what kind of, I guess, sparked you, really. Is that what I'm getting at?
Yeah, that's pretty much my inspiration. I was always into the creepy and the unknown, and I saw these people doing this on a show, and it's like, that's a thing. I want to do that. I think that's probably how most of us got into this, to be honest. Either that or if someone had a real life experience.
Yeah, I had my own experiences growing up from fourth grade on and stuff like that, but I never really seriously started investigating until probably 2012, really. I want to say, I think it was March of 2012. It was right before I really started to just do Haunted Vermont after the hiatus that we sort of did. Just because everybody had different schedules, we switched jobs. Some of us did, so it kind of became a mess when it came to trying to get together and do investigations after that. So, unfortunately, we pretty much have been on indefinite hiatus ever since 2012, unfortunately. But yeah. So basically, you started this group, which it is safe to say you started around 2023, I think, maybe 22, is what I saw according to your YouTube channel.
Let me see. It looks like our very first investigation I have actually was the Hubbardton Battlefield, and that was on Friday the 13th, October 2023.
Very nice.
Obviously, there's that stigma to that date, and I figured it might make it an interesting time to do our first investigation. And yeah, no, that was a fun investigation. In that one, it was just me, Jared, and Dean for that one. Like I said, that's we're considered the founding fathers, and like being the battlefield, I figured it was easy to access. Easy to research. You could just kind of show up. So for our first investigation, I thought it would be an easy location to do. And I mean, I had already bought a night camera that had like night vision on it several years before, because this is something I've kind of wanted to do off and on for many years before I finally did it. But I mean, life always happens. College always happened. I was in college for a while, and then I was trying to get a career going and just trying to start a family. So luckily me and my friend Dean finally did it, but so I already had a little bit of gear and equipment with me. But even for that first investigation, all we had was a night camera. We had bought a spirit box for it and a K2 meter. We got some of those motion sensor balls that are technically, it's a cat toy. And I even bought a camera that used 35 millimeter film for it, because I've read that film is sometimes better than a digital, because you have the negatives behind, which makes it easier or harder to disprove something, versus with a digital camera, they can try to say that the picture was altered. But yeah, no, and I mean, I will say, like, we did get a few K2 hits right next to the building on that investigation. However, I was looking at the time for power lines and stuff, and there were none overhead. But if you go right onto Google Maps and you look at the Hubbardton Battlefield, unfortunately, there are no power lines going from the road to the building, so they must be underground. And if you look at one of the closest telephone poles, and you make a line from that to where we were getting the tape to the building, it does intersect right where we get the K2 hits, which I did not know at the time of the investigation. But
right.
But like with the Hubbardton Battlefield, we were able to look at the like they had the cabin or the old foundation from the Selleck cabin, which was the family that lived on the farm that was there at the time of the battle. And that was another thing that we were able to research. We were able to use that name to try to trigger anything. We did some EVP sessions there. And the only thing we got was there was a sound that we don't recall hearing, but we don't know if it was an actual response or attempted response. And I will say it was also a challenge, because being the first investigation, I had never really done anything with video editing prior to this, and I wanted to have the video out before Halloween for our first video. So the challenges of editing were definitely a new experience for me as well.
Yeah, I feel that. Like, I remember back when 2012 was going on, I remember my first time editing videos for Haunted Vermont, I was using the Windows Movie Maker. Oh, man. So then they stopped doing Windows Movie Maker, and then I had to find something else that kind of made video editing easy for me. At least it's like at least something where I felt comfortable using, which I have found. But yeah, I mean, it's just I look back at some of the old videos with Windows Movie Maker, and I'm just like, oh God, like, I mean, it was something back then. I mean, I'm glad technology had changed, but geez, what a mess. But yeah, Hubbardton Battlefield. That was one of our investigations as well, and there was a lot going on the night that we went. And when we went under like a clear sky, full moon night, kind of like tonight where you and I are kind of recording this, there's a full moon going on right now. I think they're calling it the pink full moon or something. Anyway, the point to this though is, yeah, it's very interesting place for an investigation. So, yeah.
I will say one thing that about the. Do you ever have any experiences with like a sense of smell while investigating, like where you find evidence out of through your nose? I guess I should say.
Oh yeah, where you're smelling something where it should not either A, be there, or B, it just all of a sudden just kind of came in and whiffed. Yeah.
Yeah, because on the Hubbardton Battlefield, when we were at the like the top of it, where that like stone wall or barrier was, and like down the hill on the other side would have been where the British initially were coming up at the start of the battle. When we were up there,
They
at one point,
were
we got
defending the wall. Yeah.
yeah, we got a sense of a smell of like gun smoke actually. And that one was one of I would say one of the more interesting things, because I remember going on Google Maps a few days later, and I mean I was looking all over for like a house or something, like, well, maybe somebody just had like a chimney fire and we smelled what we want, but there's not really much right nearby for houses that where I would have expected to pick up that smell.
Yeah, it's a good mile or so, maybe even a couple, really, before the first actual house, and I don't even think they even have like wood burning stoves there or something, or whatever you want to call that, like a wood stove that where if somebody were to use it, you would smell it, because many times that I've been around that area, I've this is my own opinion, but I've never really smelled anything like a wood stove or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things sometimes people forget to use all their senses on it. If you ever go back there again, you'll have to definitely pay attention to that and let me know if you catch anything.
Oh yeah.
I will say, I did manage to get that video out several days before Halloween, so that was nice. But then I remember I was kind of getting the itch, because honestly, this is, how should I put it? Ghost hunting is also a pretty good escape from reality, I always say a night running around with my friends in the dark is better than a night of adulting.
Oh, I agree.
With the itch to get another video out and do some content, I ended up doing, I think it was early November. That was when I went and did a short little mini investigation by myself of the West Castleton ghost town, which a lot of that was because there was that local legend about three men that wanted to cross Bombazine, and they were slate workers from West Castleton. They wanted to go drinking, so they took somebody's rowboat, but nobody ever saw them again. And the next day, the men were never found what the rowboat was. And as the legend goes, supposedly you can sometimes see like a translucent rowboat just gliding across at the top of the water without making any wakes or anything. But I have yet to see this rowboat. But I went and checked the area out, and back then, at this time, my wife was actually going through cancer, so it was a stressful time, and I think I needed that little break, so I went and grabbed the camera and a few things, and went to do just a short video to check it out, with the thought that it also could lead to a bigger investigation in the future. And I will say that was a very interesting experience, because when I was at the house before I left, I took a mug, and I took like a cardboard paper plate. I cut a little bit of a section out of the middle and taped it back together to make almost like a cone that would sit on top of this mug. And those motion sensor balls that you click them and something has to physically touch them to make them light up, I put one of those in there on top of the mug. I almost didn't bring this experiment with me, because I had this thing sitting on my counter, and I was banging my fist on this counter, and that thing would not light up. But I decided to bring it anyways, so I went there, and I remember I'm walking the entire length of I think the larger of the two former mills from West Castleton, and everything felt fine. But as soon as I walked through the threshold into what would have been the inside of that building, like, for personal experience, I will say there was a complete shift in attitude. Like it was like an anxiety type feeling. And I opened up a beer and I poured it in the mug and I put the cone on there and I ended up putting that light on there. And that thing went off at least 3 different times. And then at one point, I was stomping my feet all around that and I could not get that light, that ball, to go off, even with stomping right next to it. So I'm glad I did end up bringing it. I didn't catch any EVPs that night, which is what I was hoping for, but the personal experience and the showing how the motion sensor balls were going off despite not being able to get them to go off on my own, it was definitely, I think, a worthwhile experience to make that trip out there, not to mention the little break that I got from all the stressors at home.
Yeah, I feel you with that, man. Like I mean, I'm glad that she recovered though, so there's that. But I guess like when it came to finding this place, because when I used to ask around for places or whatever, people kind of didn't have any idea, or people would be like, "Oh, it's by this place or that place," but I never got anything for that. And then, frankly, um, before we recorded, which I'll just put this for the record, I remember getting a message about this old West Castleton thing, and as I went back tonight before we were recording, I was gonna give props to whoever sent me the video about it, and it ended up actually being you, and I didn't realize that it was you in the video. So,
Well, I had seen videos on Facebook, like there's videos on YouTube where they talk about most haunted places in Vermont. There's a few that list that place as being one, but other than the Phantom Robo, I've never found any. I've never found any accounts of people having personal experiences there.
yeah,
And I've never been able to find anyone that's seen the rowboat either. So
yeah, I think it's just one of those weird legends that you just tell just to kind of freak somebody out. It's kind of like one of those campfire stories, is what the way I look at it. Especially since right across from where old Castleton was, you got the tap room now of Lake Bomazine. So, I mean, and who knows what it was back in the day when the slate workers were there too. So it could have been something completely different too. So
yeah, no, or even the lake house. That's it's funny you mentioned that, because I do remember trying to find, and with no luck, what could have been a pub back in those days. Because I want to say West Castleton was like mid 1800s to, I want to say, was it 1920 something that they disbanded the town?
1929, I think.
I thought it was either 21 or 29, but no, I've tried to do research, looking for any other events that could have. And honestly, a few days ago, I did find something on that town that I had not previously seen, and I've got the article clip somewhere, and I'll have to find it. But because apparently there was one incident, and I believe it said the guy was a slate worker, and I mentioned West Castleton in it, so I'm assuming it was at West, part of that company. But there was actually a guy once who, while he was working, his glove got caught in a piece of equipment, and he ended up getting pulled up into the air and dropped 50 feet. And I think it took him 12 hours, but he later died from the injuries. And that's a pretty horrific way to go. So that would actually give a good reason for someone to leave some of their energy behind.
Oh, for sure.
But
yeah, huh?
I'll send you that article sometime. I got it saved on somewhere. But
yeah, it's always fascinating how that works. I just learned some stuff about Whipple Hollow that I didn't know about, and what I hate about it is that I remember trying to look into Whipple Hall and stuff a couple years ago when we were trying to do prepping for the short film that we did called The Passenger, which was based off of the Lady in White scene on Whipple Hollow. And anyway, so we reached out to West Rutland Historical Society, or the town hall, basically, because that's pretty much where it told us to, uh, ask for questions about the history of that area. And we got sort of like a rude response back, because basically, in short, it kind of was like, there's no information about a town that got abandoned and this and that, and there's no death, there's no that, there's nothing except for they use some road like a lover's lane and parties and this and that, and it was kind of like all over the place response. It was kind of one of those like, yeah, we're not really into this ghostly legend crap. So this is what we're going to give you for a reply. Is basically what we got in a nutshell. So anyway, there's some new information that came out where apparently there was some newspaper articles that were interesting enough that would be considered useful information back in the day of doing this. But I'm just going to leave it at that because, I mean, it's mainly, this is supposed to be about you, Evan, so I don't want to, like, barge in either.
I mean, honestly, I'd say that segues into, because one of the things I wanted to talk about was when it comes to site selection and why I choose the sites I do and why I haven't picked some of the other sites I've looked at. But, I mean, history is always a big part of it for me. Part of what I like to do is I like to tell the tale. I like to tell the story. I like to keep the history alive. And if something's there and we can give a voice to something that doesn't have have its own voice anymore, then by all means. But the thing is like with our team, and I'm sure most people will have the same gripe, but we all work full-time jobs. Two of us have kids that are still kids. And we have two members that have kids, but theirs are older now and grown up. But like, I can't just leave my kids at home alone. It's like the wife's not available or something. But it's sometimes hard to find a date that works for everybody, or at least most everybody. So when it comes to picking a site, I want to definitely pick something that's going to be worth our while to go to. And like I said, I'm big on history, but like, for example, our third video that we did, I believe, was the Fort Anne, New York location. And when it came to Fort Anne, I don't know if you're familiar with the Battle of Fort Anne, but there is actually a battle that happened there during the American Revolution. I believe it was a few days after Hubbardton.
I'm thinking of Ticonderoga.
Yeah, the battle there was a 2-day battle, and it was literally like if you're driving through Fort Anne on Route 4, like there's literally a part like just before you get into the main part of the town of Fort Anne, coming from Vermont, the Vermont side, you literally drive through part of what was that battlefield, and then as you get into the town of Fort Anne, I mean, that bank that's designed to look like an old block fort?
I believe so.
No, that's what they would have had there, was a block fort that looked similar to that, except it's where there's actually a restaurant there now. And originally that's what I was trying to do, was get a hold of the restaurant. I had sent them some emails and stuff like that, but never got a response back. But as I thought about it, there was about 1,000 people for the Continental Army that were there, and I don't think too many of them would have been sleeping inside of that block fort. So they would have been probably camping out all around that area. So I was looking at different businesses in the area, kind of trying to go somewhat towards the river, as they would have wanted to be near the water source, I think. And that's where I found Fort Anne Motors, which is an auto mechanic shop. And so I sent them a message thinking, well, maybe they would have some activity left over from the battle. And they had activity, which is how we ended up picking that location. But like the West Castleton ghost town, we already kind of gone into that one. That one was another one where there's a local legend around it, and there is actual history about the town of West Castleton. You know, it did exist. You know, there's like some other locations I would love to get is the old chapel in Castleton. I don't know if you're familiar with that location at all.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that one was a medical school at one point, and I want to say it was in the 1870s that they discovered some of the students were grave robbing fresh bodies, and they were using them as cadavers to practice on. You know, and it was an attempt to further their education because people didn't typically donate their bodies to science back then. Of course, the whole town was outraged, and they came, like, after there was one woman who died. Her last name was Churchill, I believe. Something like Penfield Churchill. But when she was buried, they all went back the next day to the East Hubbardton Cemetery, which is, oddly enough, right behind the Hubbardton Battlefield. But the history was like recorded. There's been articles in the papers about it. You know, an angry mob literally showed up at this school demanding to search the location, and they found the body, but they had removed the head, thinking that it would make it harder for them to identify. And apparently, the head was later recovered. One of the students went out and retrieved it from, I think it was like a pile of hay or something that they had it hiding in. Off the ground.
I didn't even hear that.
Yeah, I found an article in the Herald Archives where they did actually recover the head after the body, but there are reports of a headless ghost looking for their head in that building. So it's like that's a location I would always love to get, but I've never been able to get my enough approval to have that one.
Yeah, I know a few people that tried to reach out and they didn't have any luck.
Well, we're not done trying, and fingers crossed, maybe one of these days I can get in there. But like some of the locations that I haven't done yet, or have decided not to do, like, have you ever heard of Bloody Pond out in the Lake George area?
Nope.
So, I think it was during the French and Indian War when the French were surrendering the fort to the British for Fort William Henry. They stopped and camped around a pond. It was a bunch of like French Canadians and Native Americans. And apparently the British managed to follow them and found their location, and they circled them and apparently pretty much executed them all and rolled them into this pond that they were camping around.
Nice.
Hence the name Bloody Pond. And you can find Bloody Pond right on Google Maps. But as I've done more research, they say that the Bloody Pond that exists now is not likely the same from the Bloody Pond that this actually happened at, and that the topography has changed so much that they would say that, you know, so they don't think that that's actually where the current Bloody Pond is, where the original one was. So I don't want to go investigate a pond only to find out that this wasn't where it even happened. You know, or another one that, like Emily's Bridge. One of these days we might go out there just to kind of check it off the list, because everybody always suggests, oh, you should check out Emily's Bridge. But a story with Emily's Bridge, I've never been able to find any documentation that backs the story. Nothing about a woman committing suicide on the bridge or having a car accident or a horse accident. But I will say, we were talking about this the other night, me and someone else, but I do wonder, is it possible that if enough people believe in a story and give it energy, that something can manifest out of the energy that people are giving it, out of believing and investigating and checking it out? So maybe that's why all these people find activity at the bridge.
Yeah, I've been there, and I've witnessed some interesting photos that we have captured. I've been scratched there, and I was not leaning up against anything or anything like that. My whole entire mood changed there near the end. Like it was almost like I was starting to be, I was like fine at first when I arrived. It was like, ah, yes, this is awesome. By the end of it, I think as we were driving away from it, I think I said like, F you, Emily, because it was like my whole attitude changed. But after like we got far enough away from it, it was like I completely changed back to being different, like another, just normal, I guess. Um, yeah, I mean, I haven't been back there as an investigation wise, but I've been there during the daytime, and even there, it's just interesting during the day, even. But one thing I'll mention is like we went like the day before July 4th, and I can't exactly remember the weather right now, but I do know that when we were at the bridge or inside of the bridge, we ended up seeing our breath. And when we pulled out the phone, the phone to tell us like what the degree was outside, it wasn't even close to the temperature of what you would need to see your breath. So it was interesting. Unfortunately, though, we just couldn't catch it on camera of like our breath. But I mean, it was something, I guess.
Well, it's funny because I will say Emily's Bridge isn't the only bridge that I've decided against. There was one location that I was looking at, um, and it's actually a train bridge that's up in Burlington, Vermont, and it goes over what is it, Lakeside Avenue. And I mean, the story behind that was
You talking about
there
the
was a
suicide bridge?
the what?
The suicide bridge? I think that's what they're calling
Suicide?
it. Yeah.
No,
I might be
no,
wrong about suicide. Anyway, sorry.
no. This actually, the way I heard about this was actually one of your other guests that you've had in the past that has a popular podcast. I'm sure you already know who I'm talking about, but he had an episode on this. But apparently, there was I think it was a cotton mill or some kind of a mill,
Oh,
and
yep.
you already know where I'm going with this.
Yeah, now I know where you're going with this. Yes.
It was depending on there's different sources that changed the name. Like it was either Mary Blair or Mary Blaze. Some people say it was Americanized because she had an immigrant name from Blaze to Blair. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not sure if it was which it was, but it was either 1900 or 1901. But she worked for this factory. It was like a cotton mill. And back then, if you were late coming back from lunch, they would dock you a half day's pay. But they had to cross the train tracks to get there, so Mary and two of her friends, they tried to cross the train tracks before this train crossed by because they didn't want to lose pay. Mary didn't make it quite in time, and she ended up getting hit by the train and died from the accident. But not long after that, apparently the night watchman would have equipment turning on. He would see things glowing, like apparitions glowing in the building. People thought he was crazy, so like next thing you know, other people were going and shadowing him as he worked at night, and they were seeing the same things that he was seeing. And apparently there was also a train that would go from Rutland to Burlington, and when it came to that spot, the light on the front of the train would turn off for a bit and then turn back on once they got past that location. Well, eventually, with all of this going on, I guess the workers started to kind of have a little bit of an uproar. So they eventually built a bridge for the train, and the bridge is still there today. That way, the workers, when they were going back to the mill, they would go under the bridge and not have to worry about the train. Now, the thing is, I've looked at, like, when I was considering the location, I was looking for businesses that are in what used to be that mill, and I've searched the internet, and I couldn't find any recent stories where people were telling accounts from this location. There was like one business that was a coffee shop, and they weren't in there at the time, but they used to have a location in one of the buildings that was part of the mill. And they said they had never seen anything to make them think there was anything paranormal going on there. And I think what may have happened in this case is once that bridge got built, I think it might have given Mary enough closure where maybe she was able to move on. So I don't think it's a location that is currently haunted. So I decided against that one.
Yeah, there's a lot where I feel like nowadays it's hard to get the information that you want, and then there's I call it Vermont had become more stubborn than what it was 10 years ago. And I only say that just because I find it harder now for people to reach out and suggest stuff or want to share something, or whether it be like an actual person that has experienced something, or even like a business. Because within the last 10 years, like I can't even recall how many places that we no longer have anymore that shut down, and now the new owners don't want nothing to do with that quote reputation. So they kind of shy away from it, or they don't like it when you bring it up, basically.
No, yeah, I hear you. Sometimes it's nice to be able to find a public location like West Castleton or Hubbardton, or like a couple other ones that I've done was the Eunice Williams Covered Bridge in Greenfield, Massachusetts. That one was a short investigation that I did, but I was on my way. Me and a friend were in Worcester and Mass for something, and on the way back, it wasn't too far away, so I decided to stop. And that's why I chose the Eunice Williams Covered Bridge. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that one, but because there was an actual recorded incident in history that happened there to back the story attached to that bridge. The whole story with that one was during the King Philip's War. There was a raid in Deerfield, Mass, and Eunice Williams had just given birth a few days before, and her newborn and I believe her next youngest child were also both killed during the raid. So she wasn't in any shape to be marched from Massachusetts to Canada. So as she started falling behind after crossing that river where the bridge is now built, she was executed to kind of set an example for all the other prisoners that were taken. But the whole thing with that one is they say at night you can sometimes still hear her scream. But like the bridge is named after her. There's actually a stone monument quoting her husband's words. And I will say that was a interesting investigation, as kind of like how I mentioned the anxiety thing that set in partway through with West Castleton. I walked that bridge 3 or 4 different times end to end, and everything felt fine until the very last time that I went on, was walking the bridge, and all of a sudden everything felt different. And that was also around the time that I got I think I got a EVP that sounded like "Help Me." So that was an interesting one. That one I really enjoyed.
That's interesting.
The other, oh, sorry, no, you go.
No, I was just going to say that's interesting.
Yeah, no, another one that I found was, this one wasn't such a active investigation, but like I usually I have a very awkward sleep schedule, and one night me and the family were doing a little vacation, and we were staying in Hampton, New Hampshire. And before I did this, I was Googling, and by chance I came across an article, and they talked about Island Path Road in Hampton, New Hampshire, and claiming that it's one of the most haunted locations in New Hampshire. And it ended up being right around the corner from where our Airbnb was, so I was all excited about that. So one night when the wife and the kids were sleeping, I decided I was going to go walk that road end to end. And the story behind that one was Goody Cole, I believe her name was, and I guess she's the only woman that was ever tried for witchcraft in New Hampshire. But they say that she originally lived on that road. But I mean, there were a few strange noises that I recovered, but nothing that I can say for certain was paranormal on that one.
That's interesting. Well, to kind of help bring it back though to Vermont, you guys did do Pittsford Haunted House, which I remember trying to do a little bit there, but I didn't really have the ability to do like what you guys did, like actually do like an investigation. So, kind of talk to us about that. Like, what did you guys experience at the Pittsford Haunted House?
Well, the Pittsford Haunted House was a nice one. I will say one of the most exciting parts about that was so my friend Cody has been working with the haunted house and the fire department since he was a kid, but and he was the one that got us in
Cody
there.
Hesse.
Yeah, that's the one, Cody Hess.
Yep. Yep. Good guy.
So he was the one that got us in there, and like shortly after we started the group, we started working with a local psychic medium and her husband. And I will say, to be fair, I've always been skeptical when it comes to psychics, but this lady surprises me every time. So, and with the first one that she worked with us on was actually the one at Florida and Motors, but we did the Pittsford Haunted House shortly after that investigation. So she came by the house and I was showing her like how I do the videos, and it was nice because she even helped me do a little like exit interview on the end of that one. But when when we weren't recording and I was talking, what she didn't know was that several days beforehand, I was messaging Cody, and I asked him, hey, are there any names that I should know about ahead of time that are linked to the building or to some like that I think might be associated with anything that's lingering around in there? And Cody's response was Mary or Amy. Well, I'm talking to our psychic, Deanna, and she says out of nowhere, she's like, so I was meditating on the haunted house, and I keep getting the name Mary. And unfortunately, if you try to research the haunted house, a lot of stuff comes back from the Rutland Herald on their archives, because unfortunately, like every other issue back then would talk about the Calvary Preventatorium, which was the name of the tuberculosis hospital for children that they had there. And I mean, a lot of them were like 2-sentence blurbs that so-and-so would go there to visit this person, or this person's coming home from the preventatorium. So it's kind of hard to sift through everything. But eventually I did find out that for about 13 years, the grand matron, or the person that was like the head honcho in charge of that hospital, was a Mary Keswick. So I wonder if that might be what the Mary that is known to haunt those halls.
Yeah, I saw that name myself, and I've been wondering if that might be the same Mary for just that reason too.
Because well, you spend that much time in that building, I feel like you're going to leave something behind,
Exactly. I also heard where the Vermont Police Academy is now, they have a, quote, Mary there too, is the story. So it makes me wonder if it's the same Mary, which wouldn't surprise me, considering when you really look at where Pittsford Haunted House is and where Vermont Police Academy is, you can basically just walk there.
Oh yeah, it's a short separation through the woods. But the whole reason why they were built there was because it was considered to be like the sunniest spot in the entire state, supposedly. And back then, one of the things that they would do to try to treat tuberculosis was exposure to fresh air and sunshine.
On your bed, yep, on the roof or whatever you want to call it, the balcony.
Yeah, which is why like what I found out through the research when I was doing the getting ready to do the haunted house. So that main building where you walk through for most of the haunted house attraction, that was like mostly administration. I know at one point there was a little playroom built into the basement, and the second floor would have been more like a quarantine for kids when they first came in. They would hold them there on the second floor until they knew whether or not they were sick with anything, and then they would move them to the two cabins that were on the side, which had like a main wing, and then there was a sleeping porch attached to like each of the two sides of that, and the kids would sleep in there. And like if you go through there, you see these like big windows that are made to crack open for the fresh air and to let in all the sunshine. But it's like I found some articles where they were talking about the early plannings of that building, which gave me a lot of good information to go on. That was also, I will say, one of my favorite pieces of evidence that I ever captured was the from the haunted house, and that was on that second floor where I was in one room at the end of a hallway on the second floor, and the co-founder Dean was in a room that was like right across the hallway from me, and my friend Cody, who we had mentioned earlier, he was all the way up. He was in between those two doors at the end of the hallway. He was kind of panning back and forth between the two rooms between Dean and myself. And as I was editing the video, I noticed, like, as he's going back and forth, that it almost looked like a shadowy, like, mist at the end of the hallway. And I watched it over and over, and then I decided, well, maybe the light on the IR camera just isn't strong enough to make it all the way down this long hallway. So I keep watching, and he's going back and forth more, and all of a sudden I start to see something sort of like taking shape, and I'm like, well, what is this? And as I continue to watch, eventually I see a clear as day reflection from the IR camera past that spot, cross another hallway, and in a window that's at the end of another room, probably at least a good 40 to 50 feet from where this shadowy, misty figure was. So whatever was there had to be strong enough to block out that IR light pretty much almost completely. But and I would say that was probably my favorite piece of evidence ever actually captured on camera.
Yeah, I remember when we were filming Dead Static, a short filmed back in the day that used to be on YouTube. Sadly, had now been taken down, channel been deleted, and supposedly the filmmaker sold the damn thing for like $100 to some Canadian film thing that they used for their project. So yeah, I don't think we're ever going to see that again. And yeah, that kind of annoys me anyway, because last year was like going to be the 10th anniversary of it, but we couldn't really celebrate it because it was deleted. Anyway, I remember long nights being at the Pittsford Haunted House, and I remember every time we went up to the second floor, it just gave off this weird feeling, like you're being watched, like there was something just weird about it. I can't even describe it really. It was just weird. And then at one point, I almost swear that I was literally watching like a little kid almost form in front of me or something, because I at first thought it was my eyes, but as I stared more, it was almost like I could see legs of a child all the way down to like the feet where the shoes. I'm trying to figure out the name of what they would be wearing back in the day, but it was like those old buckle shoes, I guess, or something like that. I don't really know the terminology right now, but it was like those old like buckle shoes that kids would wear. But that's what it looked like to me. Yeah. So I kind of didn't think anything of it. I'm just like, all right, I'm going back downstairs now because I just don't have time for this. And I was just like, I've already been in here way too long, and I don't even know if it's my eyes playing tricks on me or something really is happening right now. So yeah, it was just one of those days. But yeah, Pittsford Haunted House. That was one where I also captured on like the video camera audio, like a weird hissing sound. And I could not figure out what it was at all, but it was weird. it was like this weird hiss in the what Pittsford Haunted House would use as the waiting room. It came from there.
That's interesting. No, I will say this is also one of the other things I really wanted to talk about was editing, and I will say Pittsford Haunted House is where I feel like I started to get at least a little more confidence in editing these videos together. But like like starting off, it was rough. Like I had some issues. Like I think this was their first video where we might have had an intro with like music and everything. And I mean, I remember literally like I'm Googling for songs that are public domain, and that's how I found, I wanted something that would fit what we do, and that's where I found, probably not even saying this right, but Jeannot Scenes Number 1 by Eric Satir. What is it? And like, but that's how I found that one, and like I don't know about you, I had like a lot of issues with audio when I first started because like larger videos, I had a hard time getting the sound to transfer over with the file. And like there were in some of the earlier videos, there were times where I like literally like took the sound, played it, and re-recorded it on a microphone attached to my computer to try to get the sound to sync up with the video, and it was pretty obnoxious. And eventually I've learned to download VLC media player and use it to reformat the videos that I had those issues with before uploading it. And, one of our team's more recent investigations, I'm not going to say the location yet because I'm keeping that one a surprise until I have the green light to actually post videos, because they want to review it and approve it before I post anything online. But it was the first and only investigation that I was not present for because I was on vacation with the family at that time. And this was a location where they have a busy schedule, so it's like when they had a date available, they kind of had to jump on it. But trying to edit the video together without being there, I will say, if anyone else that's looking to start this, bring a logbook, keep a logbook, and make sure you document what equipment is where at what time, because it's hard to try to keep everything in chronological order if you don't have that. Yeah, definitely. One other thing I will say that I've learned through the process is, I know with our Hubbardton Battlefield video, somebody got a hold of me and said that, they loved the video, but they felt like it kind of just randomly stopped. So I try to make sure to add a little more of a conclusion to the videos, whether it's script or like before we maybe record like an audio type of thing. But yeah, apparently you got to add a conclusion to the end of your video, or else you're going to leave everybody hanging.
Yeah, I remember back when I kind of started, I was trying to figure out the best way to do it, and I basically sorted the evidence by what it was. So if I had like any audio, EVP, that would just be its own video. If I had any EMF stuff, that would be its own video. If I had interesting other things that I didn't know where to put it, it would just be a whole separate video. But going back to Hubbardton Battlefield, one EVP that that was captured there, I'll never forget. It was at the end. It was just me in the field, in the middle of the field, and everybody else was on top of the hill. And I basically had this weird feeling to just ask, like, "Are you scared?" And I think I tell everybody probably maybe 15, 20 seconds later, it was almost like the crickets kind of quieted down, or whatever, or whoever replied back, kind of like quieted the crickets enough just so that you could hear the response. So so I'll just say it again. So basically, I just asked, "Are you scared?" And like 15, 20 seconds later, there was a female response that said, Yes. And that's how I ended that video.
That's interesting. It's always nice to have a high note to end on. I think
Yeah.
part one of the haunted house, or was it part two? Yeah, no, I think we did a good job ending on high notes, because I will say, I thought the haunted house was fairly active. I didn't find anything, I don't feel like anything was malicious. I think it was more curious than anything. But it definitely seemed pretty active to me. And, that's one that we definitely hope to go back to. And, I've talked about wanting to collaborate with other groups and do, investigations with them, so, we can get exposure out of each other. And that's, I think it would be a great location for that, because there's 3 or 4 different buildings there, and it's a sizable location with a lot of activity. But
right.
Hopefully we all want to go back, and one of these days I need to make plans to make that happen. But I don't want to bother Cody, as he's my hookup for that location, as he recently got married. So I want him to be able to, enjoy his honeymoon and phase and all that. But we hope to go back maybe sometime this year.
Yeah, I haven't talked to Cody in a while, but because of Cody, I was able to go in there a few times. Thanks to him, he knows his stuff when it comes to that place, though. So credit goes to Cody.
Oh yeah, no, and he's also one of the nicest guys you could meet. I mean, that's a guy that would give you the shirt off his back if it would do you some good.
Oh yeah, he had 2 shirts off. If he had 2 shirts on, he would give you both of them. I mean, that's how nice Cody really is. So I'll give him props. So I guess to start to wrap this up, there, Evan, just a little bit. So one of the final places that you have for video, which is a 2-parter, you guys actually checked out the Rutland Free Library. I'm assuming because, well, it used to be the old courthouse, the jail cells, and stuff like that. So, I guess walk us into your final videos of the Rutland Free Library.
Okay, so when it comes to the Rutland Free Library, it's an old building with a lot of history, and as you already mentioned, it was at one point a federal courthouse. And I mean, you can still see the holding cells in the basement are still there with the heavy iron doors. And I mean, from what it looks like with the setup, I have a feeling that they were probably held at a different location and then just held down there when they were waiting to go in the court. I don't think people were kept there overnight, probably, from the looks of it. But I could be wrong. But yeah, with the history, I reached out, and a lot of times if I see a location and I think it might be a good candidate, I will send an email or Facebook message or something and just ask, hey, I have this group. Do you guys have any activities? Is something you'd be interested in? And I think it was the assistant director. She got back to me, and she was all about it. She'll, if you watch the video, you'll see that she's on there. But she sends an email back and gives you a little bit of a rundown of what people have experienced. And I will say there was 2 different attics in that building. So the library has 2 attics that are not attached to each other, and she says that told me that one of the attics, if you go in there, it's completely fine, but if you go into the other attic, it's a completely different feeling. And she said that she herself will not spend that much time up there. Me, Dean, and Steve, I think it was, that did the initial walkthrough. And then the other 2 members of the team that were there did not join us on the walkthrough. One was Deanna, who is our psychic medium that we use. And the other one was Jared, who he was working and couldn't make it there in time. Both of them, we did not talk to them about the attic beforehand, and both of them did not enjoy being in the other attic, the bad one. And when we looked at the history behind it, one of them was actually the one that had the bad energy, we'll call it. That was apparently the juror's room. So I think a lot of people may have had some discussions in there where they were literally discussing the fate of another human being, which I'm sure is not easy discussion, and that's why I'm questioning whether maybe that's why there's some bad energy left behind in that room.
Yeah, but that's a nice little
Perfect.
teaser. Yeah.
No, definitely. But yeah,
Yeah.
no, thanks for having me. I just want to say, at the end of the day, whether you believe in ghosts or not, a night of running around in the dark with good people beats a night of being an adult. It's better than worrying about bills and all your responsibilities. And as I mentioned prior, it's also part of a good way to have a mental break if you need an escape from the real world. I often wish uh, that I had more time to work on these projects, because a lot of times it's just like a little bit of research here and there, and editing videos and getting like minutes of video done at a time. And sometimes it takes a while for everything to come together, but it's definitely something I love doing, and I wish I had started doing it earlier in life, but I didn't. I've learned a lot of history, by researching these products. I've learned why it's important to be your own biggest skeptic, because everything you catch isn't going to be paranormal. You can put it in the video, as far as I'm concerned, and let people decide for themselves. But just because you captured a weird sound doesn't prove anything. But this has also been a great lesson to me on why it's important to take time and do things for yourself.
Right. Well, that's always true too. But when you go into these locations too, you definitely want a good mindset too. But you know, usually I ask people before closing out is like, what's your opinion and or thoughts on the whole, let's just say supernatural universe in general? Like for the example of this, um, what like from you, for the sake of the question, Evan. So let's just say you've been doing this for 5 years, or not 5 years. I'm sorry,
A couple of
2
years.
years. Yeah, 2 years. Um, so out of the 2 years now, and the locations that you've had a chance to even go to or and gone back to, and I'm saying that because of Old Castleton, do you like had your mindset change of the outlook of the paranormal, I guess?
You know, I I don't know. I don't think it has. It's like I said, it's important to be your own biggest skeptic. But I mean, sometimes I don't know if I only believe because it's fun to believe, or if I believe because there's something out there. But
Hmm.
I mean, I love using this as a tool to kind of help to retell history and keep stories alive, and share those stories. And if at the same time I can give a voice to someone who no longer has a voice but has something to say, by all means. There is one other thing I want to say before we close out here, though. I do want to mention a thank you to all my team members, because without them, there wouldn't be any of this. So really big thank you to my team members, and once again, thank you for having me on your show today. It's been a pleasure.
Of course, Evan. I mean, I like to dig dig in chat with other people that have gone to places that I haven't gone to. That I just like hearing some of the stories because I've been a one man crew for Haunted Vermont for basically what's this 2025, almost 13 years now, man. So I mean, like when I we kind of mentioned it. I forget if it's on record or not, but I'll just say it again just in case. But yes, I did have a chance to investigate Wilson Castle not once but twice, and it really goes to show that the paranormal can work on good nights, and then you got the nights where it's very quiet, and it's kind of weird when that happens because you're kind of used to the last time where there was so much activity you just didn't know what to do with it basically, and then you had this night where it was so quiet that it was just like you didn't do as much investigating as prior, so you're just kind of like, well, I guess let's just call it early. I guess enjoy the creepiness of the castle kind of thing. Just because you're just there for the overnight. So I mean, sometimes it can feel kind of creepy, and then other times it just kind of feels nice at the same time, which is weird to say, but Um, but I guess what I'm trying to say is like, uh, so out of the places that you have gone, Evan, besides Old Castleton, is there another location that you've gone prior? I think I know you just said Pittsford Haunted House too, but so let's just say those two are not on the list right now. What other location that you have gone to that you feel like you want to go back to again?
Well, I mean, I definitely want to try to do West Castleton and try to make that a more frequent thing because I want to see if it's possible to build a rapport to see if it makes an increase of activity.
Mm-hmm.
But like also, Hubbardton Battlefield is one that I would love to visit again, just because I feel like we've come. That was our first, and I feel like we've come so far since then that it would be kind of nice to be able to check it again and see if we can how our results and process changes. But
Mm-hmm.
like I said, it's time management. A lot of the times, it's hard to find a location that works for everybody, a date that works for everybody. If I had more time, I'd be pretty much open to do it at any location a second time, especially if there's ever new activity recorded.
All right. Well, Evan, the final thing I'll ask you is, so for people that are interested to see, your videos and stuff, or to keep up to date with everything Green Mountain Ghost Society, where can people even find you guys?
Pretty much Facebook and YouTube. That's pretty much all we do. Like we're not doing this for fame and for fans and for money. We just do this to put it out there. And like I said, it's about telling the story. And if we can give somebody a voice that doesn't have a voice anymore, we're all about that. So our stuff is out there. It shouldn't be too hard to find if you look for it. But the only places that you need to look is YouTube and Facebook, because as of now, that's the only places we really are.
So is that under Green Mountain Ghost Society, or
Correct.
what is it that I've seen? GM Ghost Society?
So we do have a email, gmghostsociety@gmail.com. And that's just for, like, we put that at the end of our videos on YouTube. So that way, if you know a location that you want us to check out or you have a question, that's how you can get a hold of us.
Perfect, man. Yeah. I'll put the two links that I can find in the video description of this episode below, or the podcast description, depending on where you're listening to this. And so once again, Evan, thank you for your time, and look forward to your future captures.
Awesome. We do have another location we're working on, so hopefully we'll have something soon.
Perfect.
Thank you again.
No problem. And for everybody else, you know the drill. Keep your eyes open, because you just never know if an apparition will appear in front of you.